Shortly, I'm heading off on a road trip in my Tesla Model Y from Sydney to Perth and back. This 3-week journey, crossing the Australian continent from one side to the other, will take about 100 hours of driving and cover over 9,000 kilometres. We'll be travelling across the famous Nullarbor Plain. Hi, I'm John, and in this video I'll show you what I've done to prepare the Tesla Y for this journey. I'll also show you what additional equipment that I've packed in the vehicle, and I'll also show you some planning considerations to optimise the journey. Firstly, let me say that my wife and I are no strangers when it comes to travelling and camping in the Australian outback. We see the Tesla Y as just part of the evolution of how we travel and camp in the Australian outback. Although travelling in an EV does need special consideration. We had a Toyota Prado for a long time and camped with a rooftop tent. With over 1,500 kilometres range, we had no range anxiety. In addition, we didn't need to concern ourselves with the effect of headwinds on range and drag of the rooftop tent. From there, we downsized a bit and moved to road tripping in a Toyota Kluger. We had a swag inside the vehicle and a battery box to provide power to the fridge, which kind of provides a basis of how we travel in the Tesla Y today. The next part of our EV outback road tripping evolution was to move to an EV. 2 weeks ago we picked up our brand new Tesla Y rear wheel drive standard range version from Tesla in Sydney. There's loads of space to pack the swag, the fridge and all of our camping gear. The standard range version is good for a little over 300 kilometres range on the highway. That's if we're travelling at 110 kilometres an hour. The Y comes with an LFP battery, which means we can charge it to 100% without concerning ourselves about battery life. Okay, let's look at what modifications I've done to the Tesla Y to prepare for the outback and also what additional equipment we're taking. Firstly, let's look at charging. Travelling in the Australian outback means that DC fast chargers are scarce. You'll be resorting to AC charging. Two options for AC are the slower single phase or the faster 3-phase. Single phase can be from your normal 240 volt 10 amp power point or 15 amps from a powered caravan site. 3-phase is higher power, it's 415 volts at 32 amps and it's used where there's higher power loads required. Let's unpack charging options a little further because the availability of power is going to determine where you stop and how long you stop for. The standard wall plug is the slowest. 10 amps will give you about 2.3 kilowatts and will take about 30 hours from 0 to 100%. So plugging in overnight for a charge will give you probably a third of a top up of your battery. Next is the single phase 15 amp, and this is typically what you'll find at caravan parks powered sites. At 3.7 kilowatts, you'll get a long way staying overnight in a powered caravan site. In fact, you'll probably add 50% range to your battery. The standard Tesla Universal Mobile Connector comes with both a 10 amp and 15 amp tails to be able to plug into both 10 amp and 15 amp outlets. You'll see the 15 amp has a larger earth pin. The single phase 32 amp is what you'll find at most of the Type 2 public charging stations. At 7.4 kilowatts, you can go from 0 to 100% charge overnight. And it's kind of good if you're stopping for lunch somewhere, you can plug it in and add something like 38 kilometres range per hour. 3-phase is going to be your friend when travelling in the outback. For 3-phase, you'll need special tails and supply equipment to handle the different plugs and power. The 3-phase 16 amp outputs 11 kilowatts, which is actually the maximum power that the Tesla Y onboard charger can handle. This will typically add about 58 kilometres an hour of range when charging and take about 6 hours to go from 0 to 100%. The most common 3-phase that you'll come across is the 32 amp. It's a different connector again. Though it outputs 22 kilowatts, the Tesla Y will only use 11 kilowatts of it. Here we can see there is 32 amps provided from the 3-phase, but the Tesla is only using about 16 amps of it to charge. The great thing about travelling in an EV is you have this massive battery that you can use to power all your electrical equipment. You put it on camp mode and you have that power available to power all your 12-volt accessories through the cigarette lighter. I'm not a great fan of using camp mode. It uses a material amount of power, which is not ideal when travelling in the Australian outback. And there's little inconveniences like being able to lock your car in camp mode. To keep things really simple, I've added a small power battery station to power the electricals rather than use camp mode. It's a 40 amp hour battery, lightweight, and hides in one of the rear boot storage bins. The power station charges from a cigarette lighter socket in the back of the car as we're driving. When stopped, the battery provides power to the fridge and power any other electricals as we need. There is no turning it on or off or plugging it in when needed. It is set up when we depart on our trip, and we don't have to worry about whether the fridge is on or not for the entire duration of our journey. Let's look at some other bits and pieces to consider when road tripping. Firstly, mud flaps. When travelling on dirt roads in the outback, the front wheels will kick up rocks which will chip the paint in the lower rear doors. This area sticks out and is prone to rock damage. To minimise this, I've installed Tesla mud flaps. May not stop all the damage, but it's a good cheap option. I was looking at PPF, paint protection film, though travelling in the outback you are going to get general wear and tear, just didn't justify the expense. The Australian sun is harsh, and it makes sense to provide protection inside the cabin for ultraviolet and infrared. The car has been tinted to the darkest legal tint in the state of New South Wales. The front windows were tinted to 35%, and the rear side windows and the tailgate were covered in a clear black pearl nano-ceramic film. The film rejects up to 87% of infrared through the glass and provides 99% protection against ultraviolet. Good value in my opinion. Travelling remotely means that you may not have phone coverage, and that means you may not be able to activate some chargers via their apps. Actually, there have been times in Sydney in underground car parks where there's been no mobile reception, so I've been unable to initiate charging via a phone app. I've ordered some RFID tags, which I use to start the charging process. Talking about no mobile reception, in the event of an emergency, I can now use Apple's Safety Service Emergency SOS via satellite. It is available on iPhone 14 upwards in Australia and includes emergency SOS, medical ID, emergency contacts, and Find My Location sharing, offering the ability to connect to satellite to share critical information with emergency services. The service is free at the moment, and I believe it's a great service from Apple for the iPhone. Teslas, or for that matter, most EVs, don't come with a spare tyre. If you do have a puncture or an issue with a tyre, there are options available. If I'm away from a town, I can attempt to repair the puncture by plugging it. A tyre repair kit is a good cheap option and typically includes rubber cement, this pistol grip style handle, plus reamer tools and plugs that you can use to repair the tyre. You can actually do this without taking it off the vehicle. The Tesla tyre repair kit is another option and contains an air compressor and a one-piece sealer canister to patch punctures. If I was unable to repair the tyre, I would actually arrange to get the vehicle towed. I have comprehensive road assistance with NRMA in New South Wales. Included is up to 100 kilometres of towing, and this includes remote areas. I also have roadside assistance coverage across the whole of Australia. Now the big questions. What roads do I take? Where do I charge? Where do I stay overnight? These are all planning questions, and these can be answered mostly by using two different tools. Firstly, a better route planner. It's the de facto route planning tool. Simply select your vehicle, enter your destination, and hit plan to get a full trip plan including charge stops and trip duration. Second app is PlugShare. It is the most complete map of electric vehicle charging stations in the world. Great for travelling in the outback to see what charging options the EV community have found. There's plenty of resources out there on the internet where you can learn about these tools and find out the basics about them. So I'm not going to cover those basics in this video. But let me show you an example of how to use these tools to help plan for outback travel, including contingency planning. So here I'll be intending to leave the township of Broken Hill in New South Wales and travel to Jamestown in South Australia. Google Map reports a distance of 329 kilometres, which is about the limit of what the Tesla-Y standard range will travel, assuming you start at 100% charge and you're travelling at 110 kilometres an hour. Opening up PlugShare and checking what charging is available in Broken Hill, I can see a 50 kilowatt charger. Great. I'll assume I'll leave Broken Hill with 100% charge. Now let's look at Jamestown in PlugShare. Looks like a fast charger is coming. Probably not going to help me on this trip. The Northern Area Council is showing a couple of 22 kilowatt Tesla destination chargers, and that is good to see. Okay, let's open a better route planner and see what it reports for this drive. Making sure I have 100% charge set for my position, I'll enter in Broken Hill. Enter in Jamestown and run. Okay, I can make it, but it is restricted to 100 kilometers an hour and arrive at 2% battery charge. Well, that is a little bit tight, and all we need is a good headwind or some other change in variable, and we're going to be stranded. Anyhow, we need a contingency plan. Let's look at our options. Opening up PlugShare again, and let's look at our track. We have Peterborough and Yunta. Yunta truck stop is showing a basic 10 amp power point. Not ideal, but if we arrive at Yunta and the Tesla onboard navigation is reporting a challenge in getting to Jamestown, we can potentially stop there and charge, though it's going to be really slow at 12 kilometers per hour. Okay, Peterborough looks a good option with 3 7 kilowatt Type 2 chargers available. That's a safe alternative. Okay, let's open a better route planner and look at our plan B or our contingency plan. Enter Broken Hill and enter Peterborough as our destination. Let's see. Great. Shows arriving with 8% charge in nil wind conditions. So we have a plan A, but it's pretty tight getting from Broken Hill to Jamestown. But we do have a plan B, which is basically we can stop at Yunta or we can stop at Peterborough. We'll evaluate this on the day. As we're driving, we can see our energy usage and work out, what we actually need to do. So travelling in the outback, it's important to do a lot of pre-work. And if you're in the outback and you don't have connectivity, internet connection, then that's going to be problematic. What I do is plan out as much as possible and document it before I go, because I want to enjoy the drive and not actually try and work out plan Bs and plan Cs and contingencies while I'm driving. The spreadsheet has what I've pulled from PlugShare and a better route planner and summarised segments of the journey. Shows distances and potential amount of states of charge for the drive, including any restrictions. These restrictions are mostly time related. Importantly, it documents charging information at some of the potential stops. Interestingly, a lot of the remote stops you can only charge during the day. This is to do with the fact that most are very remote roadhouses or establishments where their only power source is via generators. Generators run during the day only. Most charging is three-phase, so the intention is that when we charge, we'll stop off for lunch, charge for a few hours across lunch, then travel a bit further before camping overnight somewhere. I also keep a trip run sheet in Word format. Information for this is pulled from PlugShare as well as what I can find in the internet of other people's journeys. It's all collated in one spot for easy reference. Accommodation options and sightseeing particulars are also documented here as well. Lastly, I have a PowerPoint of what the journey is going to look on a day-by-day basis. This is to show family and friends in a more tangible way the extent of the trip and what is expected from it. Okay, so like any travel, there's going to be bumps along the way, particularly in the Australian outback and particularly because you're in an EV. It's a tough environment, but a little bit of planning, a little bit about thinking about contingencies, and it should go a whole lot smoother. That's it. I hope you have enjoyed these insights into travelling in an EV in the remoter parts of Australia, in the outback, across the Nullarbor. See you in the next video.